Hello there, greetings and welcome back to our presentations here this morning, or maybe you've recorded this and you're watching the recorded session. Maybe it's the middle of the night, wherever you are. But anyway, welcome back to our gathering here on land-based learning. My name is Jerry the Big Bear Barrett, and we still have many sessions to go this day. We're going to be talking about garden projects for your school or perhaps your community. We've got a chief coming up, and we're also looking forward to a presentation from the youth, a student panel to come up and do a presentation for us later in the conference. Right now, it is time to introduce our next guest on our dais, and it is my honor to welcome Gijik. Is from Serpent River First Nation and is one of the Fish Clan. And he has spent most of his life in the forest as a hunter and fisherman, where he studied from the elders the history of our people. He loves to tell stories of the land, and which is his favorite pastime. He has 3 children, and we've got Wabagon, Preston, and Nanook. And our presenter currently lives in Serpent River, not the actual river, but on the banks of the Serpent River, I suspect, a cultural community in his traditional homeland. So please make welcome to our conference this morning, Gijik. Good morning.
Good morning. Chigajep. Well, it's a great honor to be here. First off, I just want to give my heart and prayers out to all those out there that might not be feeling well, that may be sick or missing somebody. We're with you in heart and spirit. So ani bojo, maznapkan ge go na be bam gijik and disnikas. Gene be guk jabiga jwat and donchaba. Genoji and do them. Nishna be nini and dao. Nimki haj bekong ninda. Get you nindam ya mom pee we ganon and guk. Gi ken mananek. Going with common and zinoan. Ginak nagewan in on in. Wesiwag. Benesiwag. A gigawag. Meanwhile nesewin. Meanwhile nibbing. Anchanachigasawag. Kinage go anchanachiga de mompi. A king. Andap nan niab gedakim nan. Simak. Abdek we beskabbing in a schnabe atsu nikia. Anishnabe knakita men. No, kapska be and apnanan gaunitoying. Meanwhile, enwying. Ginwin mon pi enjabayen. Ginwin mon pi. And gosh migoying. Quag nagani wag. Amagadamawat, Ejwe Bak Mazwe. My name is Isaac Murdoch. I'm from Serpent River. I currently live at Nimki Ojibakong. I'm Ojibwe. And it's just a great honor to be here to speak with you. And today we're going to be talking about Kinama Geowan. We're going to be talking about Anishinaabe education. And it's really cool topic, and here's why. Because when we're talking about Anishinaabe education, we're diving into all of the things that our ancestors did to survive. Because all of that required a very high discipline of education to maintain the lands and waters for thousands and thousands of generations without compromising it ecologically. And it takes a very genius and high discipline of education to achieve that. Right now, even the most prestigious and the most incredible universities cannot provide the code on how we can live on this earth without a garbage can. It's just, that's how incredibly gifted our people are when it comes to education. And so first off, I just want to say that we do have our own discipline of education, that we have our own style of education. It's very different in a sense of how we learn and where we learn it and who we learn it from than contemporary education. So we know that the globalization of Western education has done a pretty good job of wiping out Indigenous knowledge all over the earth. There's no question. And for the Anishinaabe people, many of us were forced into Western education systems through the Indian Act, through residential schools, through different policies that were geared to ensure that we were filtered into Canadian society. And they did this very strategically, they did it on purpose, and they did it so that we wouldn't have any beliefs or values connected to the land. Because with our education, it's all has to do with our worldview with the land and the animals and the spirits that live in the land. And so it was very important for them to remove our education and replace it with a colonialized education so that we would never go back. And this way they could have free access and a free-for-all in resource extraction in our territories. So this is something that historically Canada has done. And we know this, and now many of us are saying, you know what? It would be nice to go back and learn Indigenous education. It would be nice to go back and be schooled in a different discipline that's going to help us, because let's face it, folks, all of us are facing the same thing. The big elephant in the room, but in this case, we'll call it the big moose in the room. The big moose in the room that is on everybody's mind all the time is climate change, the worldwide ecological collapse that's happening. We are in ecological deficit. And so how do we produce climate leaders? How do we produce those that have the education on how to live here on these lands, you know, that are in line with our original instructions? How do we live our life without a garbage can? And this is something that we're going to be talking about today. I certainly don't have all the answers. I have perhaps maybe have very little answers. But what I can tell you is that in my lifetime, I spent many years on the land. I was a hunter, I was a fisherman, and I lived my life many years without a garbage can. And my grandparents did. You know, we all come from a people that lived like that. And so, of course, at the age of 5, I was taken away by Indian agents. Back in my day, they just showed up at the door and took you away, and that was it. And so I was part of that colonization process and forced assimilation, that took place with our people, that left us in Indigenous education deficit. And so part of my life was to try to reclaim who I really am, and not what society wants me to be, or what society is trying to conform me to be. So being an Anishinaabe is very, very important business. And so, I was able to get out of school at the age of 10 when I went back, and I lived with old people in the bush. So I was kind of lucky that I had that sort of lifestyle, and that I became a very important person to my grandparents and other old people, where they talked about, the true meaning of kinamagegamagon, the true meaning of what school is. Now let's look at the word kinamage in the language. Kinamage, of course, when we hear it, it means school, but it doesn't really mean school. Kinamage, it means ke, the land. Mage, it means it's we're being pointed to it, or we're being connected. Kinamage win, it means the way of. So even when you look at the word of education or school, it directly ties us immediately to the land. And so let's go through some ideas and some philosophies on what that really means. So as a young person, as a young child, it was very common to travel and roam freely on our lands. Before the colonized education, the Western education system came about with our people, many of our people were free on the land, meaning that they were roaming around from lake to lake, river to river. They were fishing and living their life and doing their ceremonies and, doing all the things that they do. They had, of course, their own language, Anishinaabe. They had their own justice, their own laws. They had their own economy, their way of life, their Bamadsoan. They had their own customs and traditions that kept them connected to the land. And it was a full package. We were a self-governing people that were completely self-equipped to deal with our own issues that were quite compatible with nature. We have to remember, as Anishinaabeg, we are an indigenous species in our ecology. We have a place there. We belong there. And it's wrong that we've been extracted out like weeds and forced into something else that is not truly ours. And so, of course, when we were a free people, that was called the Indian problem. The last thing the Canadian government wanted was to have a free people on the land, because like I said in the beginning, they wanted to have all the land and all the resources, so they had to colonize us. But truly, what is Chinoknagay and NAN? What are our laws? Well, when I was growing up, offerings, making sure, like, the ultimate law was if you took something, you gave something back. If you received something, you gave something. That's the ultimate law there is. If you take fish, you give something back. If you take a bird, you give something for that bird. There is no other way. And that's a law. That's our most fundamental principle in Anishinaabe Adswin, in Anishinaabe Kinamagewan. That's our fundamental rule. That's unbreakable. And guess what? We didn't make that rule. That's just the rule of the earth. Because in nature, everything gives everything to everything. And it's undeniable. And it's a beautiful system of transfer of gifts, of life to support something else. And we understood that. And we were born into that system of giving. And I find that it's absolutely incredible for our young people to understand that everything comes from the earth and that we have to give thanks for it. Of course, when I was growing up, the forest was alive. There was the Ginebeguk, the Chiginebeguk, the giant serpents that lived in the waters. There was the Bnabe Kwayak, the mermaids that also swam in the waters and played. There was the Mimegwesiwak, the little magical people that lived in the rocks. There's the Bogojaniniwak, like wild little kids that lived in the forest and rocks. There's the Pahisak, another type of little people that were gifted with arrows. There was the Nimki Beneshiwak, which the thunderbirds that lived on the mountaintops. There was the Pagawagamik. There were spirits all around Bagok. There was all these spirits that lived in the forest. So as we lived in the forest, as we lived our lives weaving in and out of their territories, we always gave offerings. One of the offerings, that we often gave to the water spirits, which was very important, is Zenba Mitigon Sak, which was like ribbons and little sticks that we'd make. And we used to take all the little pieces of clothes from our family and put them in there and offer them into the water for the water spirits so that our kids would be safe. So that offerings and gifts and presents were made to those water spirits because we spent all our time on the water. And so at a young age, we got educated that this is not really our home, but that we're guests here. And that in this guest house that we live in, earth, that we have to be very respectful and watch our step. And that as we traveled and zigzagged all through the lands, we always gave our offerings. On the way there and on the way back, we'd always lay our tobacco. I was always giving tobacco. And all the time. I would offer this tobacco for this, for that. That was a very important way of life. And it helps restore the balance of us being there. Many years ago, the old people used to say, we come from the stars. You see, that's where we come from. And that, coming, they used to say, the forever lasting place is where the Anishinaabe come from. And, that's in Apingashmok. That's where they would say it is located, up in the sky, in Spiming. And that when we're born to this earth, we go through 4 sacred powers. The power of fire, the power of water, the power of earth, and the power of wind or air. We go through the 4 sacred elements and we get educated so that when we arrive here, we already have the natural code on how to live here inside of us. And that's why babies are so pure. And that's why babies are so innocent. And that they're always trying to show us the beauty of everything because they receive that education. And when we're born through that sacred hoop, we come here in this world. It's like we're in a very sacred lodge, this earth. And in this lodge are all those spirits that I talked about that are conducting the ceremony. And as we live our life, we're constantly giving our offerings, giving thanks for having such a blessing. To be able to have the lands and waters, to provide for us during our stay in this magnificent ceremony of life. And so we had our own laws that were based on, the animals. They say that the animals, the Wesiwag, were to always be the leaders of our government and that they would lead us in this sacred journey on earth. And that's why we have our clan systems, to keep us in line with the original instructions, to keep us linked together as families, and to, provide a very high discipline of organization in this very delicate, biosphere that we live in. So of course the animals, they never become jaded. They know what to do. They're well educated. They're like our professors. The animals are like our scholars. And our old people, our elders, are their interpreters. And so, this is how we understood how to live here, was through all of that knowledge. Gekendamoen. They used to speak about all of these things, this knowledge. And I think that these natural laws are really important because these laws have great depth of education. And how does one achieve that? Of course, by being on the land. There's no other way. You have to be on the land to learn about the land. It's almost like, I guess, watching Gordon Ramsay, make a delicious, Wellington, roast beef Wellington or whatever they're called. It's really fun to watch on TV, but that doesn't mean that you know how to make a beef Wellington. You actually have to make it. You have to actually do it. And so that's kind of like land-based education. It's not something that we can learn, inside. We have to be on the land, actively learning with our speakers, with our elders. in our language, because the language is the very code. It's the very thing that holds all of this together for us. It's the very thing that makes sure that the knowledge doesn't escape. It's in there. All of the things that is Anishinaabe Otsuan is in our language. It's like a beautiful spider web, and all of our teachings are all, intertwined and weaved amongst each other, and they all need each other to survive, and they hang on to each other. Our language does that. And so being, immersed in our language on the land by far is the highest form of education that we have for our people. Nothing is higher. And maybe higher is not the word. Nothing is more true would be the word. That's how we learn to live here on these lands, with our original instructions. This is where we learn our fishing, how to use all parts of the fish. How do we use all parts of the moose or the bear? How to make our gardens, how to, do our medicines, how to make sure that our Atsukanan, our sacred stories, are preserved and passed down. This is where we learn, practical things, how to, make a paddle or a birch bark canoe. All of these things that we use in nature was shown to us by animals, by spirits, or by, worldly beings that have great power. And colonization has almost wiped out the birch bark canoe. Like how many people actually go to work in a birch bark canoe? Like we can make a birch bark canoe. As a birch bark canoe builder, I can make a birch bark canoe. But am I going to work in a birch bark canoe? No, I'm not. And so times have changed and things have moved so fast for our people. And we have to remember that we were put in that position. We were forced into that. So we don't have to feel bad or guilty for not going to work in a birch bark canoe or knowing how to build a birch bark canoe. We don't have to feel bad or guilty because we don't know our language. We don't have to feel bad or guilty because we don't know how to talk the language or tell what the trees are in the language or know what they're for. We don't have to feel bad, but what we have to feel, or what would be good to feel, is empowered, because that knowledge still exists. The Anishinaabe Nation is very big. And if you start piling stuff and you start putting stuff into a basket, our nation still has everything. And that's why things like this is very important, because this is when we can all start putting stuff into the same basket. So it actually, we get a bigger picture of what Anishinaabe Otsuan is, what the true Kinamag is. So we rely on each other to share. And again, I think that we have a great opportunity to really make great change. And we have to take this crisis that we're in, which is climate change, which is colonization, and assimilation and all of these things. We have to turn that around, turn that bad energy and flip it into something beautiful. We have no choice. What else are we going to do? And to find the balance of how to do that in today, like in today's world. I mean, it's a very complicated thing if we want it to be. We can try to push things through legislation, and we can try to push things through policies and all sorts of things. And we can try to squeeze everything through programs, which is what's happening. And it's very difficult and it's very hard because of the rules and regulations and all of these things. But at the end of the day, we're in climate change. And we need to make strong decisions quickly to get our young people on the land so that they become the next climate leaders. They're going to help people and show them how to live here on this land here. Because so many people in society have lost their way. So many of our people have lost their way. And like everybody's been colonized. Not just me, but I mean everybody. You go downtown, they're all colonized too. So I think we're all kind of all in this together. And so, I believe in building bridges. I believe in creating partnerships. But most of all, I believe in taking action. We don't have the time to dilly-dally around this anymore. A lot of people will say, well, Isaac, we need to do half and half. Great. Where's our half? If it's truly half and half, where's our half? Where is the half of Anishinaabe Otsuan? And so I think that's really important that we take these steps. These are inherent, meaning that these are gifts that we naturally get from our bloodline, from the land itself, from the Creator. And this is something that we don't have to ask for, because this is something that we've received. We already have the consent, the teachings. We've been given the whole package on how to live here on this earth. We've been given that whole education package, that whole education system. We're partly responsible for that. So we don't have to ask for permission. We just need to get out there and do it. And there's some fine examples out there of people that are doing extraordinary work. So this has been going on for quite some time. So I don't want you to believe that this isn't happening anywhere. I mean, there's great people doing great stuff all the time when it comes to land-based education. And it's primarily Indigenous people that are taking their kids in the bush and teaching them about their culture, their language, and their history. And they're saying that Western education systems have taken too much space. And so they say, look, we're going to take our kids out for a couple of weeks. We're going moose hunting. And, that's the way it is. Or we're going to go to ceremony, or we're going to go to goose hunting, or we're going to go to sugar camp, or whatever the case may be. We're going to go ricing. And, this is really important that we take the time to take our kids out there as families. Often too many times these are filtered through programs and services, and it breaks it breaks away from the family dynamic of having families out there, as opposed to just a group of kids and you have a facilitator. It's so much more comprehensive when you have families out there that are staying out there, living out there. You get an education. And people are probably wondering, what is the education exactly? What is it? Like, what is Indigenous education? It's land-based knowledge. That's what it is. It's how to live effectively on these lands here. Simple. It doesn't get any more complicated than that. And when you look at our communities, we have a wealth of people that, are so knowledgeable with the language, with the ceremonies, with, fishing and wild ricing and, brain tanning moose hides and deer and knowing how to eat a beaver, that's important stuff, but also land management, learning where to hunt, what times of years, what years, all those things, making your fires in the bush. When I was younger, we used to burn places so that the moose and the berries would come. We'd burn islands. We knew how to do controlled burn. We knew how to do team hunting so that all the, everybody was able to enjoy the food. Food was everything. There's a big education on how to just get food. And I kind of think that's important now, how to get food, how to be self-sustaining. Food sovereignty is important. That's always been, a very prized knowledge that our people had, was being able to feed themselves from the land. Knowing which plants to eat, which berries, when things come into season. You know, if I had a gnoje, a pike fish, I would pretty much know how to take that whole fish apart. And I would, you know, boil the head. I'd eat the brains, eat the eyes. I'd eat the skin off the face. I would eat the cheeks. I'd take that whole head apart, eat everything. And then I would save the spine, the great big spine. I'd boil that, make a soup out of it after. I would take the guts like the liver, you know, and I'd also take the large stomach and I'd cut that out, you know, and I would eat that. That's good for you. I'd take the wheeze up, the pea bag off of that, and I'd use that for medicine if I needed it at a later time. There'd be very little of that big pike fish left because when I was young, I was educated on how to do that because that's how we lived. We never threw things away. Even a moose, same thing. No, we'd never throw them. We'd eat that moose head. We'd take all the meat off the head. I'd eat the eyes. We'd boil the eyes. We used to fight over them. You know, if we didn't use the brain, we'd eat that too. And, you know, the fat behind the eyes, we used to eat that fat raw. You know, it was good. And, you know, we'd boil the hooves and we'd eat them, singe them and eat them. Same with the ears. You know, all the guts, like the guttai, the tagose, all of that stuff we'd eat. We had our own delicacies inside the moose's guts. Even the stomach and the stomach lining, all of that was eaten. You know, because it was, you know, a moose is big. It gives a big life. We have to use it all. So the education is how do you use everything? You know, we used to make hide scrapers out of the bones. We used to make tools out of the bones, games out of them. How do you use a whole moose? That takes a good education. That's important because as long as that we have good relationship with the moose, that we honor their bodies, that we, you know, we use them because they're such a big life and they give everything to us. It's important that we use everything. So when we educate ourselves that way, then, you know, there's a lot of honor and respect that happens. And, you know, we don't offend the animals. They'll always be there for us if we can do that. You know, my father always says, use it or lose it. You know, he's like, use it or lose it. Somebody else is going to, you know, if you don't use those blueberries, they're going to walk away. That's what he's always said. You know, so it's important that we do things. And like I said, there's amazing people out there doing stuff. So like just network and build and get together and come up with ideas and possibilities and focus more on, you know, doing stuff and what you're doing than, you know, how people are going to get paid. Because that's what this a lot of times people in the land-based education system, because people are trapped in this society where you have car payments and house payments and all these things, it's almost to the point where we've been hijacked. Our natural economies have been hijacked, of course, by Indigenous affairs, where we can't function without a paycheck because we're deadlocked into these agreements with banks and housing infrastructures. And so everybody needs to get paid. So we have to, if we really want to save, you know, our way of life, then we have to try to find a way to do it without getting paid. We have to try to find a way to do it. You know, if everybody got paid for every little thing they did, then we're not going to save the language. We don't have enough money. We're not going to save anything because we don't have enough money. So it means that we have to take a sacrifice. But what that does mean is that even though we might be poorer for that period of time, we're getting something else in return. We're becoming more wealthier with something else, with the sense of this education, family, community, being on the land, all of the blessings that we get from the earth, that doesn't have a dollar value. You know, making sure that our kids are fluent speakers, you can't put a dollar value on that. Can you imagine if all of our kids in our communities were speaking like full on, like Anishinaabe? You can't put a dollar figure on that. Can you imagine that if we had so many people scattered all over the lands, and that, you know, people were living a good life out there, and, you know, the waters were clean, because when we're on the land, we protect the land. And, you know, the land even got cleaner because we're out there. You can't put a price tag on that. And so when you think about what the government did in terms of the removal of Indigenous people, you know, we pretty much just have to undo everything that they tried to do. They tried to sever us from the land, so we need to go back. They took our languages away, so we gotta, you know, rekindle them. They took our knowledge systems and our writing systems away. We got to bring those back. You know, the mustn't be ganan, our picture writing. You know, all this needs to come back. It's going to make us rich. It's going to make us healthy. Our health will improve. You know, our physical activity, our mental health will improve. Can you imagine being in a community where, like, people, like, you know, say, okay, this month we're all going into the bush. Everything's getting shut down. And we're just doing this. And, you know, and they're working together, you know, they're helping each other out. Everybody's sharing knowledge, you know, and, you know, little kids are speaking Anishinaabe. People are learning about the ceremonial practices. You know, you become a very rich people at that point, because you have each other. Because you're doing something that's so powerful and so incredible, which is taking back what was lost, by turning around and taking back what was lost, which ultimately was each other. The intergenerational effects of residential school have been so hard on our people, have caused so much division. And the lateral violence is sometimes out of the roof. It's out of the wigwam, actually, out of the wigwam, you know, sometimes. And so, you know, as we're doing land-based learning, you know, we have a standard. There is no lateral violence here. You know, we're going to work together. We have principles. We have a standard that we need to work together. We need to make sure that we check ourselves and that we're able to functionally be positive within our community on the land. That's important, because I've known lots of attempts of people that have tried land, you know, land-based education programming, and sometimes it falls apart because of negativity. You know, so again, I think that when you're going into it, you need to think about, okay, what are the ethics of this? Let's work through this. Let's put out some expectations there so that people know what to expect. You know, and it should never be a babysitting operation. You know, you see that all the time. I mean, I know I used to run culture camps all over the place, you know, all over the country, and I'd be like, "Where's the parents?" And so I'd like go on Facebook, or I'd like try to find out where they are. They're at bingo. You know, and their kids are stuck with me for like 3 days in the bush. And so it's like, no. That's not what we do. This is land-based education is done as a family. It's done as a family. That's the most effective, most potent way to learn, is by doing it as a family, because it encompasses all of the values as a family that were taken away from us through residential school. It starts to build and it starts to weave a beautiful blanket of community when we can do it, you know, as a community, as a family. And that's really, really important. So I've done culture camps where it was like, okay, Isaac's the babysitter. and I got to somehow manage all of this. And then there was culture camps where it was like the families are there, they're looking after their kids. I don't have to supervise and worry about kids by the lake. They got it covered. And it's the night and day. It's night and day. And so I believe that we learn together, share together, and that's really important. There's one other point I wanted to make. There's so many things that we could talk about, but one point I wanted to make is this: that oftentimes a young person will be partnered with an elder because that young person has a gift and that old person has the same gift. So say a young person is really good at carving and has a wokman, a crooked knife, and starts, carving little things. And that young child is going to be a gifted carver that's going to make canoes and snowshoes and all sorts of dishes and, just amazing things, dog sleds. Then you would team that young child up with the elder who was the master carver. Or if you got somebody young, maybe they're a really good artist, that's their gift. Then you would pair them up with somebody who's an artist, an older person that can teach them. Or maybe there's somebody that's gifted with, that has special powers, that can do special things. Then you would have them train with somebody that has those same things. Because that's how we master our gifts. Instead of everybody kind of collectively learning the same thing, which we know doesn't work because it doesn't work in modern society. But a lot of times our learning was custom to who we were, who we are, how we act, all of those things. And so land-based education does that. It's very, very personal. Like, sometimes when I'm with my son and I'm teaching him, about the canoe, it's a very personal relationship that we have. And it's very specific and it's very detailed. And I need to spend hours and hours and hours, hundreds of hours with him, teaching him about the birch bark canoe and the different techniques on how to make it. And so land-based learning is a big investment. But on the flip side, what do we get from that investment? A whole bunch of people, a whole bunch of leaders that know how to live here, that know the original instructions during abrupt climate change. How important is that? Nothing is more important. Nothing is more important right now. It's essential. I don't know what the word essential means. I'm hoping that's the right word, Big Bear. Essential, I think, means it's very important. And so let's really take a deep dive into this. Every community has its own readiness. Some communities may be farther advanced, some may be, a little bit behind. But at the same time, we help each other out. We help fill the gaps. We encourage each other. We build each other up. We lift each other up and say, look, this is something that we can do, and we're gonna give her. We're gonna get this done. And that's very, very important. That under no circumstances do we ever cave in to failure. We are Anishinabek. We are a nation. I am you, you are me, and we're all connected. When I drink a glass of water, 75% of my body is water. When I drink that water from the lake or the river, it becomes who I am. Even my eyes are like two lenses of water. And my whole being is water. And all of the water in my body goes down into the watershed eventually. I'll pee it out. And it'll be like filtered and stuff, right? It'll be filtered through the earth. And then Jerry Big Bear will drink it. And whoever I am, the essence of who I am, will be Big Bear. Then Big Bear will be a family of squirrels or a thundercloud. And the thundercloud will become a sturgeon fish that'll live to be 200 years old. That sturgeon fish will become a giant white pine tree. And then the white pine tree will be a little Anishinaabe baby, 700 years from now. Make no mistake that we are absolutely connected. It's hard to comprehend. We are all connected. And it's a very powerful thing. And water has memory. It's, as somebody that suffered a lot of trauma as a young person, I can tell you that that's not what defines me. Yes, that impacted my life, but that didn't create who I am. Who I am was all the celebrations, the dancing, the songs, the prayers, the offerings. All of that water that's in my body remembers all of that and carries that. That's what defines me. That's who I am, Anishinaabe. And so, we have to do what we can to support each other, to recognize that we are connected deeply and that we're in this together. When you see one person struggling, you always have that one person that just goes above and beyond. You know the one I'm talking about. They just go above and beyond. They just give, right? And they just never stop doing it. Well, we need to help that one person. And we all need to help each other if land-based education ever has a chance, because that's how it works. It's helping each other. Land-based education means helping each other. It doesn't exist. It can't happen if that doesn't work, if that's not in there. It requires teamwork. It requires strategy. It requires coordination. It requires elders' knowledge and language. It requires people, really putting in the effort and the hard work. It requires people getting up with the sun and going down with the sun. It requires, many different things. But above all, like I said in the beginning, it requires our offerings. So if this is what you want, then make your offerings. Put your offerings out. Put it out into the universe that this is what you want to do. We want to have land-based education, or Anishinaabe Adson, Anishinaabe Kinamagegamagon, a teaching wigwam in the forest. Whatever the case may be, make an offering. And in our way, for example, where I come from, we fasted for that. We fasted. We had ceremony. We kept everything in ceremony to try to achieve what we wanted to achieve. And we went back to the land, and we started to build a village called Nimkiajbekong, Thunder Mountain. And we're able to, have a land-based cultural community there now. And it was hard work. And it was very, very beautiful to be a part of something so incredible. I think that it's also important to get a whole bunch of elders in a room and have them just think and talk. It's important to have a whole bunch of youth think and talk. It's so important to have a whole bunch of community to come together to think and talk, to share the vision and try to come up with something that works. Because these camps have to be safe places. Land-based education has to be safe. And so how do we make these things safe? How do we make them effective? And how do we make them long-term? It's simply by working together and making commitments. And when you add our ceremonial aspect into it, then it becomes strong. And when you add our, people that are really doing the physical hard work that's needed, that it becomes strong. You know, I see land-based education like a beautiful blanket. You know, you grab that blanket, you can't pull it apart. You know, you say you're gonna wabuswayan, a rabbit blanket. You know, when you start pulling on that blanket, you can't break it because everything is holding everything together. Everything is interweaved and strong. But one rabbit fur, you can just grab that piece and just rip it, no problem. It rips like paper. That's how we need to be like that. You know, and like I said, we have enough smart people that we know what to do. It's just a matter of trusting, believing, and building our people up. That's important. Um, when did we want to do questions?
Hello. We have some people in the chat room right now.
Okay.
And Q&A section. Do you have any suggestions on bringing land-based education to a prison, a jail?
I believe that land-based education is part of our healing. I think that I think that if I had a camp, a land-based education camp, right, then I would make sure that that's part of our healing, but at the same time, I would make sure that kids are learning. So sometimes people's healing and trauma can get in the way of a child learning something essential that they need to learn. So I think there's a place and time to heal, and jail is one of them. So I think that when you're in the when you're in the hooskow or the clink, say if you're in the bucket, then having land-based education in those systems would benefit them greatly. Absolutely, there's no question, because land-based it is healing. It's fixing something that was broken. It's replacing something that was taken away and put in there. So yes, how do we do that? I think that people have to advocate the justice systems. And as Anishinaabeg people, we should start building more capacity on having our own justice systems. We can't always rely on the Canadian legal framework to deal with our problems. As a nation, we should start developing our own inherent justice systems that we have and start pushing for it, talking about it. Good question.
Right. And I just want to acknowledge Stony Mountain Penitentiary here in Manitoba. There was a gentleman, an elder who's no longer with us physically, Percy Tuesday, and he advocated for Stony Mountain Penitentiary to acknowledge Chief Big Bear. And so they erected a statue outside the gates of Stony Mountain, a statue honoring Chief Big Bear. And every year they have a Chief Big Bear Indigenous ceremony. And they have inmates who create teepees, and there's teachings, and their families allowed to visit. And I used to go out there. They had a huge stage set up, and they'd have all kinds of dancers and storytelling and presentations and entertainment for those. But they did honor Chief Big Bear, and the inmates who wanted to learn more about their culture, because they've had a long time to sit there and think about life, that this was an opportunity. So Stony Mountain Penitentiary isn't just, shouldn't just be the only institution that acknowledges the Indigenous culture and the history, and perhaps others should around Canada as well. So there, I've shared something with with the gathering that I've learned through the years. So yay, I did something.
Awesome, right on.
I want to acknowledge some folks in our chat room. They're really, really enjoying your amazing presentation. And so Justin gives you a thumbs up there, kudos. Gina says it's an absolutely amazing presentation. And Dana says that we are drinking the same water that the dinosaurs drank.
Oh.
How's about that? And what does Hong have to say this morning? He says, great presentation, good point about involving the whole family. Family is so important.
Yeah, absolutely. When we work together as a family, I mean, we have to remember that our families, many families are broken up right now. They're, just from the intergenerational trauma of residential schools and colonization, a lot of our families are broke up. And so this is a perfect opportunity for families to come together and get to know each other and to heal from all this jazz and to make beautiful and to recreate, what we lost. So of course, turning around and picking up what we lost is so important. And that's our family structure. That's our family unit. And that's very hard to do, but land-based education learning, it becomes so easy. It becomes so easy because we're in our natural environment. We're with elders, we're with our people. Like, we're going to be on our best behavior. Like, it's a lot easier to do, so I think that it's the right time to do that. I think it's the right time to get our people out there. It's we're actually depriving our kids from something that's inherently theirs if we don't do this too. So as adults, we have a very big responsibilities as leaders and as decision makers. We have a big responsibility to make sure that our children get that true inheritance that they're so deserving of during climate change, during this time when it's so critically important for them to learn these things. It just doesn't make sense not to do this now. If we're to think ahead, even just 1, 2, 3 generations, we know how important it is for our children to understand and learn how to live on these lands, because they're going to be walking medicine in the future. Just think in 50 years, 60 years, we want elders that are fluent in the language. We want elders that know how to read the stars. We want elders that know all the Indian names of all the places. We want elders that know how to take apart a moose completely. We want elders that know how to brain tan moose hides. We want elders that do all the ceremonial magic that's so beautiful that we see. Of course we want that. So
Right.
let's give them that. Let's give them that. Let's take back what is truly ours. Because, like I said, in 50 years, they will be the climate leaders of the world.
Right. And I'm
And
seeing,
yeah,
I'm
go
seeing,
ahead.
I'm seeing through the presentations that people have to take the initiative, whether it's a family member or perhaps a teacher or an educator, to motivate the community to start these land-based learning camps.
Yeah, absolutely. I think that we're always polite in our dealings with people. I think that we're always we do things with dignity and respect. But at the same time, we encourage and we start to motivate others and we start pushing others and saying, we have to speak the truth. We can't, there's the big mooses in the room staring at us. Like, climate change is here. We need to move. And so, respectively, we need to start moving. One thing I often say is that, in 100 years from now, 1,000 years from now, 2,000 years from now, our people will be sitting around a fire, and they're going to be telling a sacred story of when the two-legged try to destroy everything. They're going to be telling this story of right now. And who are the characters of this story? Who are they going to be? Well, we certainly have a lot of villains in the story. There's no question. We have a lot of extras. When you watch a movie and like somebody's pushing a shopping cart in a scene where there's a grocery store, and you just have somebody who's pushing a shopping cart because you just need them there because it makes it more real, but they actually don't contribute to the movie. We have lots of extras. We need heroes, people that are going to take that risk, people that are going to take that leap of faith and that jump into Anishinaabe Adson. We need people that are going to wholeheartedly believe that what our ancestors left us is medicine for the earth because they said it was. That's what the story needs. And we can do it. We just have to believe in each other and do this together. And this sacred story that's being told right now, we do have a choice. We can just keep following the road of colonization, and we can, and really, at that point, I don't know what the next chapter will be. Or we can define and use the power of our ancestors to create this next chapter and create something absolutely beautiful for our nation and for society, and to be an example of how to live here on this earth. That's what I choose. That's what I want. And I think everybody wants that.
Great. Well, Isaac Bamgijik, thank you so much. And you are a hero. You're one of those superheroes that you speak of. And so thank you so much for sharing your wonderful wisdom with us today. I see Wayne in our chat room says that your topic hit home with him. It's how it's supposed to be. He knows it, and he thanks you very much. And also somebody wants to know about your contact information in regards to doing a public a presentation for their community, perhaps. How do we get a hold of you?
Well, I do it the old-fashioned way. Just Facebook me.
The new smoke signals.
Smoke signals. Just get me on the Facebook, Isaac Murdoch. Look on there. You'll see me on there, Isaac Murdoch. And then just give me a message, and I'll get back to you for sure.
All right. Well, thank you so much for this, Isaac. It's been very informative, and people absolutely loved your presentation. So thank you for sharing this morning.
Naha miigwech bama pig wab na nem. Naha miwe.
All right. Our presentations continue. I'm looking forward to the youth panel coming up, the student panel coming up during the lunch hour. On this particular break that we're having right now, our play to win word is explore. The word right there at the bottom of your screen is explore. Write that down. Get involved with the prizes because we have some big draws coming up at the end of the conference. But the play to win code on Isaac Murdoch's presentation is explore. And we're going to explore a lot more. We want you to shake it off, get up, move around a little bit. And we're going to have our student youth panel come in here. And I'll be asking some very important questions of the youth to find out where their mindset is when it comes to land-based learning. So that's it for now. And we'll be back at 12 noon, I believe.